Hello and welcome to ZDNet Security Update with me, Danny Palmer, Senior Reporter at ZDNet in London. Today we're here to talk about ransomware, which has become one of the most common types of cybercrime perpetrated by cyber criminals. In these attacks, they lock down entire networks of organizations, then demand Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency as a payment in order to return the files. In many cases, organizations are paying up, but that doesn't have to be the case. With me to discuss ransomware is Sherrod DeGrippo, Senior Director of Threat Research and Detection at Proofpoint. So Sherrod, thanks for being here. And what's the current state of ransomware right now?
Thanks for having me, Danny. So ransomware has really evolved over the past few years. I would say 2 or 3 years ago, we were seeing massive first stage ransomware campaigns in the millions. So we would see 1 million attempts a day. That was with a ransomware called Locky. But today things have really shifted. What we're seeing now is that the threat actors like to deploy a downloader. So these are modular little pieces of malware framework that allow the threat actor to get a foothold into the machine and then decide later what they want to deploy. And in some cases, they make a decision to deploy ransomware instead of a banking Trojan or a keylogger or remote access Trojan, because the machine that they're on makes sense to put ransomware on.
And ransomware has fast become the main way criminals make money from compromising these networks, because as you mentioned, there's things like Trojans, but that takes time to make money from, while ransomware, it's almost instant.
That's right. And ransomware deployed as a later stage in an attack after a downloader has been deployed first, it allows the attacker to make an intelligent choice. So they can look and see, okay, what are the chances that the owner of this machine would actually pay out? A lot of IT departments have been able to deal with ransomware by simply taking somebody's laptop and handing them a new one and starting fresh. But you can't do that with high value machines that contain server data, customer data, patient data, financial data. If the machine is one that's critical, then the organization is more likely to pay out. And that's how the threat actors are making their decisions.
So what are some of the most notorious ransomware campaigns we're seeing right now?
So Locky, the days of Locky are gone. And I think that those of us that watch the threat landscape sort of were a bit surprised that it disappeared when it was such a huge player. I think that GandCrab is probably the one that we see the most lately. And that's one that it's pretty standard. It encrypts the files, it asks for a ransom. We watch pretty closely on networks to see when ransom notes are deployed, which means that a machine is about to be encrypted if we see a ransom note sent across a network.
So what do you think we can expect to see from ransomware going forward? Because obviously, as you've hinted at, it's always changing. We're constantly seeing new forms of ransomware emerge with new tactics. I suppose that's going to be the same going forward.
I think so. I think that we've also seen in the landscape in the past that threat actors would sometimes sort of moonlight with ransomware. Maybe they were primarily focused on banking Trojans and they want to do what works. They want their payday. So they would try a ransomware campaign. I think that we might see that return. I think we also might see the return of sort of the smaller cottage industry ransomware variants where somebody says, hey, I'm just going to do enough ransomware to make a little bit of money and then back off. While the large organized crime syndicates that do that as threat actors will continue to do the large scale ransomware, but only on machines where they feel they have the highest chance of getting paid.
So what can organizations do to protect against ransomware, no matter who it's coming from?
I think that preparation obviously is the best thing that organizations can do. They want to be ready, not just technically, but from a plan perspective of if we do get ransomware, despite all of our technical controls, what will we do? That question should be already answered. Not just the procedures of how will we handle the technical part, but what do we tell our shareholders, customers, employees, and do we pay the ransom? Making the decision ahead of time takes the emotional heightened state out of the equation. It lets organizations decide ahead of time and be ready. Preparation is really the number one thing to do with ransomware, on top of all of those security hygiene and basics that we always suggest too.
Thanks, Sherrod. Good advice. And thanks for coming on the show. And for more on cybersecurity, be sure to keep reading ZDNet. Thank you.